Hey everybody, how y'all doing? I wanted to come on here again and talk a little bit about influence of stories, or rather, what has influenced my stories. Everybody has different things. For me, a lot of my stories have come from, my nightmares or bad dreams, or just the things that, I watched as a kid. I was big into Tales from the Dark Side. I love anthology horror. You get a little bit of everything. Tales from the Crypt. Things like that. I really liked, along with every other horror movie I've ever seen when I was younger. And just to mention something about bad dreams, my book here, The Damon Cloak of Hanael, partly was influenced by a bad dream that I had. Well, it didn't really turn out bad. In the dream, I was being chased by something that I couldn't really see, and I managed to leap up in the air. My jacket turned into wings, and I flew off. And that's kind of the premise of this book here. The Damon Cloak was made by the Archangel Hanael. It's a regular gray cloak, but whenever you put it on, it changes its shape. One person might wear it and it turns into a World War II bomber jacket. One person might wear it and it turns into a long black leather trench coat, or it might turn into, just a tuxedo vest, just whatever the individual has his aesthetic taste for. The main character in this, it turns into a black leather trench coat for him, and the wings come out the back if you want them to, and you can fly off. Basically, you're impervious to mortal weapons, but the thing is, you're not really going to be going after mortal creatures in this. You're going to be chased by, you're protecting the thing from demons and whatever else. The cloak kind of has a mind of its own. It can kind of come to life to help protect the person wearing it. Or if the person wearing it happens to be evil, it might come to life to help them do evil. The cloak kind of depends on who's wearing it. And in my book here, a daemon is, in mythology, it was a spirit, good or evil, if I remember that correctly. In my book, a daemon is what ancient man used to call the angels. This goes back to even before Adam and Eve, but I'm not going to go too much into the story. But I will say this. I finally got my first review on this, and it was a 5-star review. The reader loved it, which I'm really proud of because, 5-star reviews aren't easy to get, especially, for an unknown person like me. And I really do it was great to look on there and say, hey, I got a 5-star review, cool. This book is available on pretty much every platform, paperback and Amazon, digital for Kindle, Nook, Kobo, iBooks, And I do have copies on hand usually, so if you want to contact me directly for an autographed copy, I'd be happy to autograph it for you. And we'll discuss. I got PayPal, so we can discuss that later. Influences for this, Haunting on the Nobility. My wife and I love to go on cruises, and on Royal Caribbean they got art auctions, which I'm sure they have them on other cruises too. And I got to thinking it would be cool if the ship was haunted because of a cursed painting. It's causing something. At the time, I didn't have much of an idea of how I was going to make the plot go, but I finally, came up with an idea, fleshed out the plot, wrote the book. A haunted cruise ship, cursed painting, and margaritas. What else can you expect? So I was basically influenced for that book by just the fact I love going on cruises. And art auctions were pretty fun to go to. They weren't all hoity-toity. The auctioneer was laid back, very, informative, educational. They don't believe art's just for the rich and the snooty. They think everybody should be able to enjoy art, which I do too. Granted, in my office here, the most artistic thing I have is dogs playing poker, but, it's still a good work of art, classic. Okay. Yoakum's Compendium of Bizarre and Original Stories. This is a short story collection. A lot of different things have influenced the stories in this. I'm only going to name a few. Let me see. Paper or Plastic. This book, or this story I should say, was influenced by two major things. When I was in high school, I bagged groceries. And then at around that time, there was a movie that was out, lesser known movie. It had Chad Lowe and Christy Swanson in it. It's called Highway to Hell. In it, the guy, hell cop, takes his girlfriend down to hell because she's supposed to be, become the devil's bride. He has to go into hell to save her. But it's not like a horror movie. It's actually funny. It's a comedy. Gilbert Gottfried's in it playing Hitler. I mean, come on, how much more ridiculous can you get? This story is about a guy that works in a grocery store, and one day he gets taken to a grocery store in hell, and he's been told, okay, you're supposed to work here for eternity. So he has to find his way out to escape hell, and he's helped out by his uncle, who's actually in hell for being executed for axe murdering a busload of nuns. If anybody's going to be able to, be down there in hell to help you out, it's your uncle who went there for murder. And okay. Do Monkey Daw Hands. That was based off of a nightmare I had when I was about 5 or 6 years old. I believe these little creatures lived in the sewers, and they came out through your toilet. Little sea monkey looking guys. And I would think they would bite you on the feet and you would turn into one. Now that's the stupid crap that a 5-year-old comes up with, I know, but my family thought it was funny, and all these years have gone by and people are like, hey, you ought to write a story about that. So I wrote one. It's in this book. And just so you know, none of these stories are recommended for young kids. It might have been a nightmare from childhood, but this is not a children's story. I'll just say it gets kind of bloody. Okay. Lost in One Eye. It's about pirates in the Mediterranean. I actually wrote this while I was in Bahrain. I was there for 4 months, and I wrote this short story over there. I wrote it out on pen and paper. And when I got back, when I rotated back to the States, I fleshed it out, typed it, turned it into a pretty good sized short story. That was just pretty much influenced by the fact that pirates are cool. Everybody likes pirates. One story on here called I Am Balls. That wasn't influenced by anything really, but a long time ago I worked at this place, and one of my coworkers like, so you like to write, huh? Think you can write anything? And I'm thinking, I don't know, maybe. What you got in mind? I'm just going to give you 3 words. I want you to write a story called I Am Balls. Just go with it. I said, okay, fine. I went home that night thinking, this is stupid. But then I got an idea, and I wrote a story called I Am Balls. It's about a pair of sentient testicles that cause the writer to get up in his sleep unknowingly, and he's typing out the story, but the balls are saying, okay, I'm using this guy, here's my origin. It's kind of a silly meta type story, but I liked it. This is one of my favorites here. The Circle of Unlife. I like vampires. I like vampires that are psycho, sadistic. They like to just kill and feed. Maybe if they have to seduce people, once in a while, that's fine, But as long as they're not sparkling fairies who whine about killing people. I like vampires to be vicious. So I wrote one called Circle of Unlife. And my premise of it is, when you get turned into a vampire, your soul leaves the body and goes on to whatever, heaven, hell, oblivion, whatever awaits you in the afterlife. So basically, your body's still moving around, but with this sickness, darkness inside of it that causes you to feed on the blood of the living. But like I said, your soul's gone. Well, this vampire in this story, 100 years later, he finds a human. He's like, something familiar about this guy. He figures out that that's his soul from his... He died, the soul went on, reincarnated into this guy, so the same physical body, the soul used to be in here, now it's in here. Just a little thing I thought was kind of cool, because that's the thing about it, is where does a soul go if you become a vampire? Is it trapped inside? Well, I come up with the idea that it does move on and it can come back. Well, I got a lot of stories in here, so I'm not going to go over all of them. Red Cap, book 1 of my folklore series. I kind of think this might be kind of like the flagship of my collection. I've had the most people talk about this book. The Red Cap, I got influenced by a few things. For one, it's actually in mythology. It's from English folklore. It's like a little dwarf who lives out in abandoned castles and stuff, and it has to kill travelers, and it soaks its hat in the blood of its victims. If the hat ever dries out, the magic that keeps the Red Cap alive will disappear and it will die. So it needs fresh victims, you know. In this book, you know, the Red Cap is in a modern setting. I've always liked mythology and folklore, and that's kind of the influence of this, but I wanted to do a darker, more modern story. Kind of like, I don't know if you remember the movie Troll from 1986. It was one of my favorite movies. Kind of silly and goofy and dated now, but I still like it. I want to do a more graphic adult version of it, and that's what this is. Okay, and I'm only going to do one more. Baba Yaga. This was influenced by the witch out of Slavic and Russian mythology. I make her a lot darker than I think she normally is. I think sometimes she's considered to be a cannibal. I don't know. There's so many different versions of it. But in my version, she's a highly sadistic, powerful, dark witch. And even other dark witches don't want to be around her. They leave her alone. Don't even try to bring her into their covens. They're like, okay, leave Baba out of it. I mean, we don't want her here. Baba will keep people trapped in her dungeon to harvest for spell components and for food. So basically, if you're in her dungeon, you're either going to be eaten or cut up into a spell component for something vile and dark. She usually appears as a beautiful young redhead to those she's trying to seduce and trick, but her true visage is that of an ancient old crone. But she's magic. She can go back and forth however she wants. I'm going to talk a little bit about my poetry book here. I mean, poetry, I don't really know what can influence poetry, just however you're feeling. And I got silly poems, I got dark poems, I got thoughtful poems. And there's also, I know they're not technically blurbs, but that's what I call them, written articles. I did some of these in high school, some in the military. And all the poetry, and it's hard to explain what influenced any of these poems. It's whatever mood I would have been in at the time. If I was depressed, angry, pissed, sad, happy, drunk, whatever. And the Targathian. I guess I did go through all my books. This is, I like to refer to as my unauthorized, unofficial biography. You know, because basically the character is kind of me living vicariously this adventurous life. He's taken from his life in 1998, which I was 23 years old at that time, brought back in time 500 years and discovered that his family's not from Earth, they're from another world. And from there he discovers his destiny, and he becomes a Bactanae, which is, they're called the Sons of Michael. They were created to counteract, you know, when Lucifer fell, he created all these monsters. These guys were created to help combat that. They basically stay out there in the Imperium where there's an emperor, but they really rule the thing. You know, he's like a puppet leader. I don't want to get too much. It's a big story. It's pretty thick. And this is the first book. I'm working on the second book of the trilogy right now. But anyway, in here he combats a lot of vampires which originate from space. And I explained my vampires, they bite you. It's not going to do anything to you except hurt, and then they drain your blood. To become a vampire, you have to feast on their blood. They have to force you to drink their blood, and then it'll turn you into one. Some of my vampires, if you kill them, they drop dead just right there. Sometimes they burst into ash. Sometimes they turn to a gooey mess. It all depends. They die differently. But I explained that the sunlight does not burst into flames. Sunlight's not going to kill a vampire in my books. I explain, though, that they get very lethargic and weak and slow because no matter what planet they're on, the solar radiation, will hit the atmosphere and create sunlight. Well, that sunlight, no matter what planet they're on, like I said, it'll get into their cells, and it causes them to kind of slow down and be like, "Oh, I can't. I'm too weak." So that's why they operate at night, because there's a lot less of that. I mean, you're still going to have that type of radiation in the atmosphere even at night, but it's a lot less in the moonlight. At least that's how I explain it here. I'm not a physicist. I'm not a astrophysicist or whatever. I'm just a guy with a vivid imagination. And besides, that's why this is fantasy. There's time travel and space travel and all that, but it's not. I don't consider it really science fiction. To me, there's a difference. Star Trek is science fiction. Star Wars is science fantasy. Because Star Trek, yeah, they do get pretty realistic with explaining how things work. Star Wars is a bit more mystical and, yeah, fantasy-like, because, not just the Force, but the way their ships fly in space. But you know what? I don't care. I still love the Star Wars movies. It's still, a big influence on my life. I mean, some of it did influence in here. I mean, there's a lot of sword play, and when you become a Bactanae, it's not like it's not a Jedi. I'm not trying to rip that off. They just have enhanced strength and agility, and your mind is, 10% of your brain? Theirs is more unlocked. They're more aware of their surroundings. And occasionally they develop a side power, and my character got pyrokinesis. At first he can't do a lot with it because he's still pretty new at it, but over time he's going to be able to create great fire. But that'll come in the later books. Alright, so once again, I'm going to show you all my books and remind you that they're available at Amazon, Barnes & Noble, any online bookstore. Amazon's best because, you get it a lot quicker. And if you got a Kindle, a Nook, Kobo, and iBooks, if for your iPhone, it's on all my books are on all those platforms. So, Yoakum's collection of poems and blurbs. That's actually a picture of me when I was TDY up in Alaska a long time ago. Redcap, Folklore Series, Book 1. Baba Yaga, Folklore Series, Book 2. And in the works I have Incubus, Folklore Series, Book 3. And it's going to be about an incubus causing sleep paralysis, which I've experienced and it's not fun. The Targathian, Sargus, Book 1 of the Targathian Trilogy. The second one I'm also working on is the Targathian Crimson Death. Yoakum's Compendium of Bizarre and Original Stories. Has all my short stories. Guaranteed something for everybody. Oh, there's also a few stories about Santa Claus in here, but not the kind you want to read at Christmas. Haunting on the Nobility, Haunted Cruise Ship, Cursed Painting, Dark Presence Overseeing Things, and Margaritas. And The Daemon Cloak of Hanael. Shape-shifting cloak, being kept out of the hands of two Hell Lords, who are also screwing over the Illuminati. Okay, that's all I'm going to do right now. Remember, all these books are available online, digital, paperback. And you can always contact me directly. Go to my website, LarryYoakum3.webs.com. It'll be on the main page. There's links to my Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, LinkedIn, YouTube video channel, Amazon authors page. All my social media is on the first page. And of course, you can click on the link. There's a page for my books, information on that. Quick links that'll take you to the Apple store, the Kindle store, the Barnes & Noble Nook store, all that type of stuff. Oh, and I want to give a quick thanks to a galaxy called Dallas. That's their address right there. Take a look at that. That's the comic book store that the cool guy James that runs it, he let me do the second annual All Hallows reading there. Me, John Moody, Brandon Henry, and Dana Burnworth. We're the crew that every year we do a Halloween-esque book signing in October. All of our horror and ghost stories and blah, blah, blah. And we're going to do it again next year. Probably have a new t-shirt, maybe some more signage, you know, kind of bling it out a little bit, make it look all cool. Didn't have a very good showing this time because we've had crap weather all day. It was like really bad. So I'm sure a lot of people, you know, didn't want to get out there and risk getting washed away, which I get that. But I couldn't change the date, you know, I had the t-shirt made up already. So I will see you all soon, and keep tuned to my video channel here for more updates, and have a good rest of the weekend.